So you've probably heard OpenAI is building a new browser called Atlas, and of course, it's powered by ChatGPT. But here's the thing, to create a browser that's truly built for AI, they couldn't just add a new feature or a sidebar. Nope, they had to go right to the core and reinvent it with this really clever architecture called OWL. So let's dive in and break down exactly how they pulled it off and why it's such a big deal.
The vision for Atlas is actually pretty simple, but it's massive in its ambition. I mean, just imagine having an AI co-pilot with you on literally every single website. Something that's always there, ready to help you understand, summarize, or even get things done. But to make that experience feel completely seamless, totally instant, OpenAI realized pretty quickly they couldn't just build on top of what was already there. They had to go way deeper.
So you gotta ask, right? Why would a team with access to the world's best browser engine decide to essentially tear it apart and rebuild it from the ground up? Well, the answer is a really fascinating story about where big ideas run smack into a technical wall.
Right. So the goal here was never just to make another browser. We have plenty of those. The idea was to create an experience designed from scratch for how we're going to interact with the web through AI. And that meant they needed a foundation that was both incredibly powerful and incredibly flexible.
And when it came to choosing that foundation, it was kind of a no-brainer. Of course you start with Chromium. It's the engine that powers Chrome, Edge, you name it. It's super secure, it's fast, and its web compatibility is second to none. It's the gold standard for a reason. But, and this is a big but, using it the standard way came with some major strings attached.
Okay, this is where things get really interesting. Because while Chromium is an absolute beast of an engine, its standard architecture, well, it threw up some serious roadblocks for what the Atlas team was dreaming of. You can just see the clash right here. On one side, you have the Atlas Dream, a browser that feels weightless. We're talking instant startup, buttery smooth animations, and opening hundreds of tabs without your computer crying for help. But on the other side, you have the reality of Chromium. It's a bit of a monolith, you know? It has its own rigid way of starting up and doing things, which made hitting those performance and design goals a real challenge. And this wasn't just a tech problem. It was a culture problem. A huge part of OpenAI's engineering vibe is this idea of shipping on day one. But a full build of Chromium can take hours. That would just grind their fast-paced, iterative style to a complete halt. Something had to give.
And that something turned out to be a really elegant solution. It has a pretty cool name too, OWL, which stands for OpenAI's web layer. This is the architectural magic they cooked up to get the best of both worlds, all the power of Chromium without being trapped by its constraints.
So what is OWL really? At its heart, it's a pretty radical idea. Instead of building their app inside the massive Chromium structure, they just flipped the script. They decided to run the entire Chromium engine as a separate background service that the main Atlas app just talks to. This separation, this is the key to everything. This slide just lays it out so perfectly. You know, we started with those old, monolithic browsers, where if one thing went wrong, the whole app crashed. Then Chromium came along with the revolutionary idea, put each tab in its own process. So if one site crashes, it doesn't take everything else down with it. Brilliant. Well, OL takes that exact same logic and pushes it one giant step further. It moves the entire browser engine out of the app. It's a fundamental shift in how you think about building a browser.
Okay, so that sounds cool in theory, but how does that actually work? How do you get a beautiful native app to control this massive browser engine that's off running in its own little world?
The whole system is basically broken into two parts. You've got the OWL client, that's the Atlas app you actually see and interact with, built with modern tools like Swift, and then, humming along invisibly in the background, you have the OWL host. That's the full Chromium engine, just doing all the heavy lifting of rendering web pages.
And the secret sauce that connects them is a technology called Mojo. The best way to think about it is like Chromium's own internal high-speed nervous system. It's built for ridiculously fast communication between different processes, and it lets the native Swift app give commands to the C++ engine and get info back almost instantly.
And the benefits you get from this separation are just massive. The Atlas app itself is simpler, cleaner, more modern. Startup feels instantaneous because the app doesn't have to wait for the whole engine to fire up. If the web engine crashes or a page gets janky, the main app just keeps on ticking, totally unaffected. And, maybe the most crucial part for their culture, engineers can now iterate and build new things incredibly fast.
This architecture also unlocks some really powerful, next-level features.
Take something like an AI agent mode, where the AI is actually browsing for you. Because the browser engine is separate, OWL can do clever things like intercepting pop-up menus and feeding that info back to the AI so it has full context. It also creates a secure sandbox so the AI's inputs can't accidentally trigger something they shouldn't on your system.
So let's talk about the bottom line. What's the real-world payoff for all of this complex, behind-the-scenes engineering?
For the developers, the difference is just night and day. By treating Chromium like a pre-built component, build times for the Atlas browser drop from hours all the way down to just minutes. This isn't just a small speed bump. It enables a whole culture of rapid experimentation and innovation that would be completely impossible otherwise.
This quote from the team really just sums it all up, doesn't it? OGWL isn't just about solving an engineering headache. It's about creating a totally new foundation. It opens the door for experiences that are faster, more beautiful, and way more deeply integrated with both AI and the operating system itself.
Ultimately, this story is bigger than just one product. By decoupling the application from the web engine, OpenAI has basically created a more flexible, more powerful, and way more developer-friendly blueprint for building any web-centric application in the age of AI.
And this leaves us with a pretty fascinating thought to chew on. When the web engine can be treated as just another background service that any application can talk to, what does that even mean for the concept of a browser? Maybe the future isn't a single window we use to look at the web, but a web that's seamlessly integrated into every single app we use.